Hello, everyone. We are live covering the trial of Zoe Rosenberg. It is week 3 and day 8, and they still don't have a jury. So let me bring you up to date as we recap. Here is Zoe Rosenberg actually rescuing the 4 chickens. This is what prosecutors say is a crime. She is saying she had no alternative, that she had tried to report what she describes as criminal animal cruelty over and over again without success. So she took matters into her own hands. And that is one of the things that is going to be debated at trial. We've got tons of breaking news for you. One of the things that happened this weekend is a caravan of factory farms. There are several dozen supporters of Zoe Rosenberg who have converged from around the country on Sonoma County. And when the weekend comes and there is no trial, they do actions. And this was a 200-mile journey from one factory farm to another in support of Rose's Law. Now, we're going to go straight out to the courthouse where Matthew Zirable is standing by to bring us the very latest. And Matthew, tell us what is going on there right now.
Yeah, well, I'm up in here in Sonoma County. As you just heard, we're about 55 miles north of San Francisco Bay Area, and we've had all sorts of people coming out to support and to learn about what factory farming is like in Sonoma County. It's a great opportunity to tell that story. Just this weekend, we had a group go around looking at some of Sonoma County's factory farms. There's a large set of chicken factory farms, egg factory farms. Sonoma County was once known as Egg Basket of California. It's lost some of that title to the Central Valley more recently, but still a lot of egg producers here, and unfortunately very concentrated in factory farms. Also dairy factory farms around here. We took a long look at those. And now currently there are jurors likely trickling in behind me. I'm a bit far away from the building because today we're going to be entering voir dire, which is the second stage of jury selection. We have a large pool of candidates now. We don't know anything about them other than that they're physically available for the trial. And so voir dire will be today going through, talking to each juror candidate and seeing whether they have any bias, any familiarity already with some of the factory farms here that says whether they can or can't be eligible. Perhaps they have heard of activists and really love us. We have a lot of people who support, give thumbs up when we do banner drops around here. And unfortunately, if they already are fans of Zoe, that would make them ineligible for bias. Similarly, if there's somebody who's heard about the rescue, for any reason, they're probably going to be ineligible. Or if they are opposed to activists taking actions in Sonoma County, that'll also make them ineligible to serve in a jury.
Thank you so much for that update. We've also got some very exciting breaking news to bring you. And essentially, it's that Simone Reyes, country music star extraordinaire, is joining us live to mention why she brought up this trial while she was performing this weekend in Hollywood at a concert. Let's play a clip of her performance, and then we're going to talk to her on the other side. All right, there she is, Simone Reyes. So, wow, it's very interesting that you brought up this trial and Zoe Rosenberg while you were performing. Can you tell us a little bit why you did that?
Of course. And first, sorry, the audio isn't great when you're playing live and you use an iPhone. It's not perfect. Well, the truth is that I have a trial, obviously, but when I filmed the music video, "Call Me Crazy," the Patsy Cline song, I filmed it at the Happy Hen Sanctuary, and actually borrowed one of their little chickens called Chuckles, who has accredited um, thank you on the actual video. Oh, there I am. Okay, yeah, wearing a wedding dress and carrying a chicken, which is very country, I think. Um, and it was my first time at the sanctuary, and I was so incredibly moved by seeing all of these animals, especially the ones that have been, through the worst of times, that have seen only cruelty and the worst of humanity. They're enjoying their lives and being taken care of so beautifully by Zoe's mother and by everyone associated with Happy Hen. It was a magical place to film a video, and it was really, really lovely to carry Chuckles around with me. Because in the video, the character, is leaving her husband, and the only thing that she really cares about taking with her is her chicken.
So let me ask you again, why did you feel it was important during this big concert that you had in Hollywood to bring this case up as Zoe Rosenberg is on trial, possibly going to go to prison or jail for up to almost 5 years? Why did you think it was important for you to interrupt your concert to mention Zoe's case?
Well, what it comes down to is that mainstream media, let's face it, is never, I don't think it's ever going to report on the animal abuses that are happening in, slaughterhouses, big pharma, all of it. They're never going to do it. So luckily, younger generations are getting all of their information pretty much from social media, places like Unchained TV. So if there's an audience, I'm an activist. So of course, I'm going to use my voice to talk about what's happening right now and how people need to change the way that they're living and change their mindset to one that, stems from compassion. And I think that anyone, whether you're in a concert hall, listening to a band, or just somebody online at the supermarket, I think when they hear about the atrocities that happen to animals in slaughterhouses, on the way in transport, and then what happens to the activists that step in to try to save them. Literally, if these were children being tortured in this way, every single news network would be all over this. Every single person would be talking about it. But because it's animals, people look the other way. They don't see it. They don't want to know. They think, well, that's just part of the food chain. That's just what happens. So if you have an audience, of course, I'm an activist. I'm going to use whatever voice I have in any setting. And if it's at a concert, then great, so be it.
Well, I think what it is a bigger battle over the culture. Animal activists are portrayed almost as un-American. You are a country music star. That's Americana. And I think it's so interesting that you're basically saying, no, animal ag, you don't own the culture. All right. And weigh in on. We also have Renee King-Sonnen here, who's a former cattle rancher turned sanctuary owner. She's going to talk in a second. But let's talk a little bit about that, Paige Parsons Roach, in terms of the culture battle. This trial, some people are saying it's going to flip the script and put animal agriculture on trial. So as we see this trial unfold and these jurors go in there and there's voir dire today, it's also important to take a look at the tug of war this trial is highlighting over the culture. Is American culture a culture that says cruelty is okay? Or is it a culture that says you can be country and compassionate, Paige Parsons Roach?
Well, first of all, I want to note that Petaluma is about an hour and a half from our state capital in California, where a lot of lobbyists are lobbying for protein coming from an animal source. So I just want to point that part out, that those are the facts. And here's what I find is that most people, I would say, if we were to do a poll and ask the folks in the town of Petaluma, do you know that your chicken potentially is coming from a place of cruelty? Okay, we're calling it cruelty, but to them, maybe that's not cruelty. But if we showed them the facts, I will almost guarantee you they would not know what goes on. So to that point, Jane, the culture war is about, I think people are innately compassionate. I really do believe, because I will point this out one more time. If you are driving down the street and you see a deer, you're going to veer from the deer. If you see a chicken crossing the road with its chicks, you're not going to run it over. You're going to move around it. So I have a feeling most people don't realize what's going in, and they're being sold lies when they're in the grocery store. They're being told these are humanely raised. They don't say kindly slit their throat or slaughtered, but most people don't realize all the information that goes into and the facts about what's going on behind closed doors. Back to you.
Well, we are here, and Renee King-Sonin of the Rowdy Girl Sanctuary is here, and she is a former cattle rancher turned sanctuary owner who actually, her sanctuary is right next to the barbecue capital of Texas. So, Renee, you probably know more about changing the culture, because you are, nobody's more country, no more Americana than you. What do you make of this whole battle over the culture, where essentially the powers that be are trying to say that to be pro-American, to be patriotic, you've got to be for consumption of meat and dairy, and you've got to basically be anti-compassion to farmed animals.
Thank you, Jane. You know, when I went vegan on a cattle ranch, the big issue was that I went against tradition. I went against culture. I went against that inherent, innate loyalty factor. There is a factor, a loyalty, quotient, if you will, in the whole animal ag sector, especially in good old boy Texas cattle culture. You don't go against that. You don't even consider those taboo subjects, like thinking about going vegan on a cattle ranch. That is taboo. So in the barbecue capital of Texas, in Lockhart, there are barbecue restaurants on every street. I mean, literally probably 30 to 40 just in Lockhart. And they're proud of that. So to change that culture means to go deep down into the generations, the 8th generation cattle ranchers. Those people own the culture. They think they do. That's the problem, is they really think they own the culture. And we are here to say, you know what? Cattle ranchers are going vegan. Country western music stars like Simone Reyes are vegan and talking out. We can write songs about changing our way of life. It's not about, it's about changing culture and still maintaining and owning your tradition. You can still be traditional and change the culture of violence.
Excellent points. Renee King-Sonin, who is here with me in our Los Angeles studios from Texas. So, this is, I think, very important. Lindsay Baker, you are a social media influencer, and you're based in Los Angeles, but you're very Hollywood. So tell us what your take is, because seriously, you know what? Hollywood was created. It was created from people from New York, by the way, who moved all the way out to Hollywood when it was just an orange grove in approximately 1905, 1906, 1907. And it grew from there. And that is the dream machine. And they could determine exactly what the culture was. So Mary Pickford, Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, those were the originals. And they actually invented the culture. We can reinvent the culture here in Hollywood and also in the country music world, as Simone Reyes is doing. She's saying she's country. She's just as patriotic as anybody else. She talks about Patsy Cline and she talks about all these American icons, but she's also saying she's vegan, she's compassionate. What are your thoughts?
Well, as a person that's in all three of the unions and has worked as an actress, I feel like Hollywood is the ideal place to change hearts and minds. It's good. The thing is, do we have enough people that will make these movies? Well, come along social media and all of us doing our own filming, our own videos, we can move beyond that. We can leapfrog over that. I remember how hard it was for me to get roles. Now I can submit myself. It's become much more democratic and there are openings. It is really, really a hard wall to break down. I'm not going to lie, but it is possible. And if we could get Hollywood movies or just for this kind of entertainment, like the entertainment on Unchained TV, to become more mainstream, then I don't think we're going to have any problems, because once people see what's going on, they can't help but agree. People are basically, as Paige was saying, others were saying, they are basically good. They love their dogs. They love their pets. We just have to make that connection. And can I say one more thing about the culture in Texas or elsewhere where meat is a big industry? There is also the business side of it. So we've got that going in our favor because the business is collapsing. The reality of producing this much meat, what it's doing to the earth, what it's doing. I mean, these people are being propped up by the government. So it's clearly there are doorways in, roads in, and I'm happy about that.
And you're looking once again at video of country music star Simone Reyes performing at the Happy Hand Sanctuary. So I want to talk once again with Simone, who has joined us live to discuss why she interrupted her concert this weekend to bring up this trial when she's performing in Hollywood, a country music concert. And Simone, you revealed that you shot your music video, the one we just looked at the Happy Hen Sanctuary. So tell us about the Happy Hen Sanctuary. What was that like to be there?
Happy Hen Sanctuary is a magical, wonderful place where there are not just hens. It's called the Happy Hen, but there's not just hens. There's all kinds of farm animals there. And what's so striking about it is, having a sanctuary run by a veterinarian, there's a lot of medical going on because, as we know, animals that are to be food suffer horrendous bodily abuse. So you see animals with broken bones and open wounds and head trauma and, every other thing that you can imagine that's awful happens to an animal happens. And at Happy Hen, they get incredible veterinary care and love and fresh air and sunshine on their faces and the opportunity to live as they should, as their rights, as just human beings, sentient beings, should always provide them. So it's a magical place. It was such a joy to record the video there. And it was especially lovely to meet Chuckles, the chicken who I was carrying around there that you saw when I was wearing the wedding dress. He was such a little angel. And I looked into his eyes and I thought, I can't imagine the horror that you have known in your life. And yet here I am, a stranger, cradling you in my arms, and he was still able to trust. That's the beauty and the heartbreak of animals, is that they are able to still be the best in humanity, despite what humanity has done to them.
And imagine the stress that Zoe Rosenberg is under, having to be a defendant in this case while her sanctuary is going on with all the animals there. Now, her mother and a whole bunch of team members are taking care of those animals. But, let's listen to a little bit of Zoe describing herself. And the first thing she says about herself is that she is the founder of this sanctuary. So just put yourself in her shoes. She's going to trial. She could possibly be sentenced to up to 5 years. And she's got a sanctuary with all these animals that depend on her.
My name is Zoe Rosenberg. I am an animal cruelty investigator and animal rescuer with the Grassroots Animal Rights Network, Direct Action Everywhere, and I'm the founder of Happy Hen Animal Sanctuary in San Luis Obispo, California. We just found another chicken on the floor of this farm who is in critical condition. She's collapsed on the ground. She's unable to stand up on her own. You can see the other chickens have kind of run away from me, and she can't even stand up. So we're going to get her out of here as well and get her the veterinary care that she needs so that she can survive instead of slowly dying of dehydration on the floor of this farm where she can't even stand up to reach the water. I'm currently facing 1 felony and misdemeanors and up to 5.5 years in prison. I've been wearing an ankle monitor for over a year, and it's all because I rescued 4 criminally abused chickens. Their names are Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea.
So good news, she's had that ankle monitor removed. Tiffany Brunelli, you're a former law enforcement investigator turned DXC member. What do you think it's like in terms of stress for Zoe, knowing that she has this sanctuary that depends on her to a large degree, and she's facing this trial, and she also has health problems? She was in the hospital up to just a couple of days before the start of this trial.
Yeah, I can't imagine the stress, the health with her. She has diabetes 1, and just all of her health issues going into this trial, up to 5 years in jail, leaving all of her beloved animals. I can't even imagine the stress level. It must be at 1,000 plus. It's just
and tell us, you've been on some of these extravaganzas where Direct Action Everywhere does these protests over the weekend. What can you tell us about how they unfold? Because that was a pretty major undertaking that they did, where they literally are going 200 miles in a tour of the factory farms in the area.
Yeah, Jane, they plan every detail, and a lot of their actions look so creative, and they're so innovative. They recently did a funeral in a store around the chicken body parts. So it may look like, oh, they just pulled this together at the last minute, but they're very detailed, and they look at everything and they think about everything. They study the civil rights movement very closely and try to follow some of the tactics that they used. So I just respect them so much, because they do plan and they put so much thought into it. And I do want to say we have a Rose's Law banner drop planned here for Wednesday. We're going to hit 6 freeway overpasses with each. I worked on banners all weekend. Each one of the Rose's Laws, each one of the 5 parts of Rose's Law over the 10. So if anyone's interested, they can hit me up, or DXC LA. So it's going to be really exciting.
It's very important to talk about what Rose's Law is. And this is Rose, the one chicken that law enforcement allowed the rescuers to take with them during a massive open rescue back in 2018. And Zoe Rosenberg, the defendant in this case, took care. You can see it sparked a global movement, Rose's Law. Zoe Rosenberg actually took care of Rose until she died. And this Rose's Law is in honor of Rose, the chicken. And here's what it says: the right to be free, not owned, or to have a guardian acting in their best interests. The right to not be exploited, abused, or killed by humans. The right to have their interests represented in court and protected by the law. The right to a protected home, habitat, or ecosystem. The right to be rescued from situations of distress and exploitation. So I want to bring in Ellen Dent, who is an activist who works for all of those outcomes. Ellen, could the script be flipped on this trial? They're trying to set an example of her. I mean, let's face it, a 6-week trial costing probably millions of dollars over chickens that are worth, if they were healthy, $24. Clearly, there is something more at stake here than just a straight out prosecution. This is almost like a culture war battle. Do you think the goals of Rose's Law will be enhanced by this trial?
I hope so, and I hope that there's exposure for Rose's Law. I hope that this trial helps lead to the ability for activists to rescue these animals that are in terrible need of being rescued. I mean, you could see the chicken in the footage that you just played couldn't even stand up, couldn't get to water. I mean, we're talking about extreme cases of animal cruelty in these facilities, and these animals don't deserve that. Just like Simone had said, had this been children in these facilities, the news would be all over it. And they need to cover this. They need to cover what's happening there. And I applaud Simone Reyes for using her platform and her talent, to bring this truth out to the public, to help change the culture that, doesn't see these other animals as individuals, but yet sees them as a commodity. And, I also want to comment that, I can't imagine how upset Zoe is being away from the sanctuary, being away from all of these chickens that she loves, including, Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea. These chickens that she's worked so hard to rescue and care for. And I don't know if you have the footage, but there's footage on Unchained TV of her, breaking down with one of the residents, saying that she's, so sad that they won't be able to visit her, if she ends up, going to jail. And I just don't find that acceptable.
Yes. And, what we're doing here at Unchained TV, we're covering this trial. And by the way, the trial is now underway in 3 minutes at 1:30. So Matthew had to go into court so he could find out what actually is happening so he can report it for us. But it's been very hard to get a jury. They've had hundreds of people in, and most of these people are saying essentially this is going to be a hardship because it's going to be up to 6 weeks. This trial could go on through the end of October. And again, Zoe is charged with felony conspiracy and 3 misdemeanors, could go to jail for almost 5 years. And the judge in this case, Judge Noss, had said that this could go on through the end of October. So I just find it absolutely astounding with everything happening in our world today that government resources of this level are being focused on this case of 4 chickens. We know that people shoplift. It's a problem. Let's face it, right? Some people are locking up their containers in stores, and shoplifting is an issue. But I don't think I've heard of a 6-week trial over shoplifting of $24 worth of whatever from a store. What do you make of that, Paige Parsons-Roach?
Well, like you said, Jane, I think this is a culture war because essentially the folks who are pushing the narrative that Americans need protein, and so therefore we need to keep these chickens in these situations to provide you with your protein, right? That's what's being pushed, when the reality is that's not what's happening inside the closed doors, which is henceforth why any activists, including all of us on this expert panel, are on this, spending our time to bring, again, the awareness of what's truly going on. So circling back to one thing that Ellen said is this is a case for it's the public versus the private, and who is in the profit sector of this, who is gaining profit by this, right? That's the point that I think people need to realize when it comes down to this long trial being drawn out, this process of 3 weeks of choosing a jury. I mean, it sounds like it's literally like a murder case. Now, we aren't talking about animals who get by the billions get murdered daily. But at the same time, that's not what's on trial right here. It's not about that. We wish we could get to that place, right? We wish we could get to that place. But at this point, what we're dealing with is a young girl who had learned of the atrocities that were happening and the abuse, this alleged abuse, and therefore she felt passionate like she would to break open a car window if a dog were panting and looked like it was going to die, or any kind of an animal at that. But back to you, Jane.
Well, we invite those companies who are involved, Perdue-owned particularly. I want to say that Perdue says essentially they are a leader in animal welfare, dedicated to the highest standards of animal care, and give our birds space to roam, access to the outdoors, enrichments that support natural behaviors, and that the allegations by DXC, they call them an extreme group with the ultimate goal of ending animal agriculture altogether and imposing a radical agenda that would threaten the livelihoods of Sonoma County farmers and the food security of millions of people who rely on animal agriculture. We invite them on anytime, and also check out Perdue's website where they go into depth on their record on animal welfare, corporate.perduefarms.com/responsibility/animal-care. Now, I think one thing we can agree on is that, yes, the ultimate goal of Direct Action Everywhere is to end animal agriculture, but they don't consider that a radical agenda. What they consider a radical agenda is 2/3 of Americans overweight or obese, heart disease killing millions of Americans due to the overconsumption of cholesterol-laden food. Cholesterol only exists in animal products. Climate change accelerated by the fact that we're giving the planet a buzz cut to grow crops to feed more than 80 billion animals we kill every year. The idea that 140,000 chickens are killed every minute on this planet, DXC says that's radical, not actually ending animal agriculture. So I guess if there's one commonality that the company on the other side of this case, on the other side of DXC can agree on, is that yes, DXC would like to end animal agriculture, but does not agree that the livelihoods of farmers depend on that any more than you could say we shouldn't be driving cars because that put carriage horse drivers out of business, or we shouldn't be using electricity because that put candle makers out of business. They're saying it's just the future and that we have to make this transition because animal agriculture is killing the planet, among other things. So Renee King-Sonnen, again, you are coming from Texas. You are in the heart of cattle country. You're a former cattle rancher who turned your calf cow operation into a vegan farmed animal sanctuary that protects cows. What are your thoughts on this whole idea that it's not just a culture war, it's an economic war with the other side essentially saying, if this happens, it's gonna cost jobs?
Well, the reason they say it's gonna cost jobs is because the culture war is all about, them thinking they own the family values, they own the traditional values, they own the economy, they own it. They forget that culture is ever evolving. Nobody owns culture. It evolves as we do. And what we have to continue to do as an animal rights sector is to come together, and so that we can evolve culture in the economy that we're trying to go towards. That's the reason, transitioning farms is a buzzword right now. The work that Mercy for Animals is doing with transformation, the work Animal Outlook is doing, the work that we did with the Rancher Advocacy Program to transition a chicken farm to a mushroom farm pilot project that was very successful. Unfortunately, it didn't happen long term, but the narrative is out there. The buzz is out in our movement. How do we give farmers a way to transition so they can make money? And that is crucial. It is crucial that they know how to do that. Unfortunately, because of the culture that we live in, see, they really like to think that they own the traditions. They own the values. They own everything about our economy. And the reason they do is because we have given them the license with no voice. It is time for our voices to speak out. That is the beauty of this trial. Zoe's voice is resonating through the courtroom, through social media and platforms like Unchained TV, and all of us out here that are doing everything we can to amplify it. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Renee King-Sonnen. Very well said. Yes, and the law enforcement is truly, I could say objectively, taking a stance that its job, it's actually sort of saying to the world that its job is to protect animal agriculture. To wit, take a look at this. Several years ago, there was what that's called an open rescue. That's what Direct Action does. Direct Action Everywhere tries to report what they call criminal animal cruelty to law enforcement over and over and over again. And then when action is not taken, they do what's called an open rescue. Take a look at this law enforcement response to an open rescue that happened several years ago. Now, the Direct Action Everywhere people are holding their hands up in love signs and peace signs. They're carrying flowers. They're playing guitar. They are not engaged in any way, shape, or form in any violent action. They don't want to injure a chicken or a lamb or a human being or anyone. But if you look at just the powers that be, law enforcement, that tells the story more than I think anything else. And so one of the reasons Unchained TV is covering this every single day, as inside the trial right now, where there are no cameras in the courtroom, a jury is trying to be seated and the judge is trying to find 12, they say 12 angry men, but that's old fashioned, 12 hopefully objective men and women to sit there and listen to this case. Is that obviously prosecutors are going all out to prosecute a case for 6 weeks that's going to cost a lot of money over 4 chickens that, if they were healthy, are worth $24. But Zoe Rosenberg, who rescued those chickens, is making a case in court that they were not healthy, that they were very sick. And one of the key issues is condemnation records. So another investigator, this woman, Raven Deerbrook, who is a very famed animal cruelty investigator who has risked her life to go into these facilities in other cases. For example, she went into a pig slaughterhouse and actually put herself close to the gas chambers so she could videotape for the first time what happens to those pigs when they're killed, because essentially it was being said that they kind of nicely go to sleep. And she got horrific video of nightmares of these pigs screaming their heads off as they thrashed around, being deprived of air and killed. This woman is, let's just call her badass, okay? And she went into the facility where Zoe Rosenberg ultimately took those chickens from, and we'll show you a little bit of Zoe committing the actual crime for which she's charged, which she calls a rescue of chickens. And that Zoe Rosenberg went in there and took photographs in the months before this action you're looking at right here. And one of the photographs, or some of the photographs she took, were of records, what's called condemnation records. And there's a huge battle right now over, will those condemnation records get in front of the jury? Because they purportedly show how many chickens show up dead on arrival, how many chickens show up diseased and have to be condemned and can't go into the food chain. So that's going to be a really big battle in court. And this Raven Deerbrook is hoping to become a witness, as well as Carla Cabral, who was the animal caregiver who took care of the 4 chickens after they were removed. And there you see the moment of truth. There is Zoe Rosenberg getting those 4 chickens out. And this is the video that the jury will be allowed to see. Will they be allowed to see other video from inside this facility as animals are strung up and killed? The general sense is no, they won't. So Simone Reyes, I know you've got to leave in a little while. We want to thank you for being here, but give us your final thoughts as you watch the chickens that are at the very heart of this case, Poppy, Ivy, Azalea, being removed.
I mean, like everyone else that watches this, my heart breaks for every chicken, every sentient being that has found themselves in the worst possible situation, which is to be on the way to someone's plate for food. And what's the only good thing about, having this footage is that I have no doubt it will change the way that people view animals and eating animals. And it will finally get it through their heads that they have been fed lies for centuries about what animals go through to get to the plate. Because let's face it, nobody wants to sit and watch an animal being, having their limbs broken, being debeaked without anesthesia, being slung upside down, being put in scalded live. They don't want to hear the cries. They don't want to see the images. People naturally turn from this. But if you're going to eat them, you should be brave enough to see what you're giving your money to. And at the end of the day, I want to still, being an activist, since I was in my early 20s, it's very easy to lose all hope in humanity, but we can't because we're activists, and we have to continue to believe that if people really see what's going on and knowing that they are a part of it by giving their money and buying the food, that they will change. And that is the best way that we can change this. If there's no one to buy it, they're not going to be able to continue on. And we would love to take every farmer and help them transition. There are groups, as you said, that are doing this. There is a way out for them. We are not trying to create problems for farmers. We are trying to help them because, let's face it, they've got children, most of them, grandchildren. This is not sustainable with climate change. If they want to live longer to see those grandchildren grow up, they need to understand that the only way to do that is to stop eating animals and stop being part of the cruelty machine and jump into the next wave, which is one of compassion.
I want to thank you, country music star Simone Reyes, for joining us today. Again, she made news by, we were live recording her concert and she started talking about this case. So that's why she's here today. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And keep us posted if you mention it again in your next concert. All right. Well, let's round robin it again. We have voir dire going on inside the courtroom as this culture war goes on outside the courtroom. And I will say this, bye-bye, Simone, it's like Survivor. The panel keeps getting smaller and smaller. But you know what? We're doing what used to take dozens of people and millions of dollars with giant cameras, and we're able to actually create a studio and create a panel discussion similar to Court TV in a computer. And so the breaking news is that voir dire is starting today. That is a jury. Hundreds of jurors have already gone into the system, and a lot of them, estimates 50% of them at least, said they don't want to be on this trial because it would be a hardship because it's expected to last so long. And one last thing I want to mention is that there was a brochure. You're looking at the brochure sent to, now the claim is every single person in Sonoma County. I don't know if that's true, but it was widely distributed saying, stand with Sonoma County's poultry workers. And, some people are wondering, is this an attempt to influence the jury? Because some of these people who are walking in there may have very well gotten that brochure. So let's talk about that a little bit. I wonder if that's going, and we'll find out tomorrow. We're going to be back here tomorrow. We'll find out tomorrow what happened in court and whether this brochure came up as a question. Have you seen, if I was a lawyer for the defense, the first thing I would want to ask is, did you get one of these in the mail? Did you read it? And what's your reaction to it? Simone, Paige Parsons Roach.
Well, it says stand with your farmers. So essentially it's stand against activists or quote unquote extremists. So to me, that brochure is unfair that it's been put out. I hear there are also billboards that have been put up to say, should this person go to jail? So they're putting out this information against Zoe, my understanding. One point I wanted to make, Jane, because I just looked up the word condemnation, and that means carcasses are condemned for contamination from intestinal contents, bile, other materials. The other reason would be injury and bruising. Technological failures during catching, handling, transport. This is what they're looking for. Diseases and illnesses. Inspectors look for evidence of systemic disease or localized conditions. And then there's all kinds of conditions here. This is the one that sort of surprised me. Well, birds that dead on arrival die, right? Abnormal appearance. Carcasses with a disgusting, in quotes, appearance. Abnormal colors or signs of emancipation are condemned. Processing issues, problems at the slaughterhouse, such as inadequate bleeding, excessive scalding, can cause condemnation. Who creates and uses these records? Who are they for? Federal inspectors, the USDA, the U.S. Food and Safety Inspection Services. Examine the poultry, the chickens, before and after slaughter. Slaughterhouse management. Processing plant is required to track the number of condemned and disposed birds. Growers and producers, poultry farmers also receive a copy of the condemnation certification for their flock. These records are crucial for identifying potential issues with on-farm management practices. Now, this is what I just looked up, but I would be interested to see if everyone is following these protocols, because to me, that's what's at stake here.
Well, this is the kind of thing that in court they're going to be battling over. And it seems pretty obvious that the prosecution wants to limit that testimony. They want to limit images. Weigh in on that, Renee. They want to limit images of the chickens that are inside, and they want to limit those records.
Well, absolutely. And that is.
Hang on, Jane. Over to you, Lindsay. Okay, let's see. They may have dropped out. I have access to. So it's us.
Technical issues. We're back.
The culture war is such that the powers that be want to wrap cruelty in the language of family, tradition, and freedom. Imagine that our court system and the people there are creating these narratives. It's all about the family violence. It's all about freedom violence. It's all about tradition violence. I mean, good God, every which way you look, they're creating ways to wrap our values, our very identity, who we are, in violence. And they are going to use every trick in the book to make violence look American. That's really
and we have a violence problem in this country. And it was, I believe, Leo Tolstoy, who said, as long as we have slaughterhouses, we will have wars. And Pythagoras made a similar statement more than 2,000 years before that, essentially saying, as long as we are killing animals, we will be killing each other. And, you know, it breaks my heart every morning when I go on my phone to look at the latest news and I see another mass shooting. And there was just another mass shooting yesterday. And it seems like every day we're having a mass shooting. And you got to wonder, Tiffany Brunelli, let's put it to you. You know, people would say, oh, you're being hippy dippy to make that connection. But if you take the idea that killing leads to more killing, then everybody, we are killing more than 80 billion animals every year in industrialized animal agriculture. And, you know, the society is trying to say that doesn't count. That killing doesn't count. But does it count? Tiffany.
Yeah, there's so much violence on our plates. I saw a quote recently, peace starts on your plates. Just the standard American diet with the protein of a dead animal and then the butter and dairy industry on the plate. It's just, it starts right there. It's all around us, and it's starting in our grocery stores on our own plates. So I think we're just inundated with it.
But see, what I find fascinating, and one of the things I think it's really great that this trial is happening and that we are essentially forced to discuss this every day for 6 weeks, is that every day people out there are hit with millions of images urging them to do the opposite of compassion and to eat animals. And even one of the biggest chicken companies in the world, I won't quote it, they have a big cow on top of their stores and says, eat more chicken. So they're acknowledging that the cows don't want to die. And they're saying in what they think is a funny way, cows are telling you to eat more chickens. And the truth is that chickens are the number one animal killed, far beyond any other animal. If we just stopped eating chicken, we would reduce the number of animals by more than 75 billion. We would essentially remove most of the deaths if we stopped eating chicken. So it's very interesting that this is a chicken rescue trial. And I feel like those people who are so interested in prosecuting this case to shut Zoe down, let's face it, this is not about $24 when you have a 6-week trial. Let's be real. It is not about $24. It is about this threat from these extremists who are telling us we don't have to kill 75, 80 billion, 90 billion animals every year. Paige.
Well, as Renee was saying, protecting the values, but we're being shoved down our throats, these quote unquote American values. I mean, let's face it. You turn on the television, you drive down the street, you're bombarded with messaging about how sexy, how cool, and now how American it is to protect the farmers from, you know, these bad guys that we're considered the bad guys because we're committed to putting out the truth. So people have a choice. I believe that if people have more information about the truth, that they will change. That's what happened to me. I thought I was doing the right thing by shopping down the aisles at these expensive bougie markets because I was told that this was the right thing to do to buy this kind of meat because it was the least harming, right? So I was already in the tent when I had my full awareness of, wait a minute, hold on. This is just not right. I can get my protein. I can get my calcium. I don't need dairy milk. I don't need to eat chicken to have a delicious chicken taco or burrito. I can put something else in there and it actually has less impact on the planet, being an environmentalist for half my life at least. And I can actually stop this cruelty. What? I had no idea. Not to mention the workers that are in these horrible conditions, right? That's a whole nother aspect of it. I mean, who's doing the killing of these animals? Who are in these slaughterhouses? Let's talk about that on the other side at another day, because that's a big piece of this as well. And what I forget, Renee, Ellen, everyone's been talking about the transition. I'll guarantee you human beings would much rather be working with the vegetables than they would be with the killing of the animals.
So Lindsay Baker, weigh in on this as we, literally, we've already been covering this for 2 weeks. They still haven't selected a jury. We're hoping that opening statements will be later this week. And, this is something that has been going on now for so long. I want to play the video of her being arrested in late 2023. It's now almost 2026 and they still haven't gone to trial. And it's going to be a 6-week trial. The amount of resources spent on this is so mind-boggling. And sometimes the more you try to suppress something, the bigger you make it. That, I think, is the law of unintended consequences, Lindsay Baker, that we are seeing with this trial. They clearly don't want people doing these open rescues and any of these rescues of animals. And so these arrests are happening, these prosecutions are happening, but could it actually backfire?
I think it already is backfiring. I think, it's getting more and more attention all the time. And that is part of what we can do. And everyone watching and everyone that sees this and feels helpless can do. Something just went through my mind, and I just want to throw this out here. When I saw the cars with the writing on it, I thought, well, what if we all put Rose's Law on our car, maybe with soap? But then I thought, if we created, or we created a sign, it just says, do you know Rose's Law? But a QR code, and it takes people to where they can see what's going on. They can see footage. They can see what this case is about. I think that could really be a guerrilla, viral campaign that we could start. There's so many ideas and so many ways that we could step up and help with this. This is an opportunity. They opened the door by trying to suppress the truth, but the truth will ultimately prevail, and it's going to happen. It's happening now. Even if Zoe is convicted, God forbid, they will not stop doing this. There's just going to be more of it. And the longer it goes on, because they can't find people that are just unbiased enough to not see the cruelty here, to not somehow be touched by this. They're not finding people. So that alone, there's so many red flags that are already here. Do they dare to continue? You have to ask yourself, how long will they be silly enough to be standing there before they realize that people see that the emperor is naked? The emperor is not wearing any clothes.
And this is a global movement, Ellen Dent. I mean, you are looking at Rose's Law, which stemmed from this one chicken that was rescued, transform into a giant global movement, all to get an animal bill of rights. And one of the fundamental premises here is not to be killed. So yes, essentially, Direct Action Everywhere completely agrees with Perdue Farms that their agenda is to eliminate animal agriculture and to a transition to a plant-based food system. Isn't that interesting? We found agreement between either side. The question is, one side is calling that a catastrophe. Another side is saying it's absolutely essential to prevent a climate catastrophe. Ellen.
Absolutely. I mean, it's essential that we transition towards plant-based diets. Any argument that they have, we can come back for, including the jobs issue. I think Renee had brought up, it's speculated by the World Economic Forum that 18 million jobs would be created if we transition towards plant-based food systems. And then also in 2022, Assemblymember Ash Kalra was able to allocate $5 million towards alternative protein research from the state of California's budget. So this is, definitely the way that we will be moving forward if we're going to have a good future at all, for our young ones. And as a mother, that is something that I am fighting for wholeheartedly, as well as a more compassionate world. I actually had to hop off of this call right now to take a call from my daughter's principal. And she called to let me know that they are not going to be distributing a pro-dairy coloring and activity book that was sent home with my daughter last year when she went on a field trip to a pumpkin patch. So I was really excited to get that call, during this live, that she's going to make sure that the teachers block the distribution of that coloring book that depicts these happy cows on farms. And we just know that couldn't be more further from the truth in most cases.
Yes. Wow. That is news. Really breaking news happening right here. And, when you talk about, yes, they talk about the happy cows. And I was just looking over some of the file footage that we've been working with covering cases, for example, bird flu. We had Dr. Crystal Heath, a noted veterinarian who went around in California documenting dairy cows that have been downed and died as the result of bird flu. And this is shocking footage, but it's taken in California, and there's various other shots of dead cows on the side of the road who have died from what she says is pretty obviously bird flu. And look at the contagion possibility of these animals being on the side of the road, rotting carcasses. So yes, the reason I show this is not to shock anybody, but when they talk about, oh, the happy cows, and this is a cow with stuff coming out of her nose and face. When they talk about the happy cows, okay, they don't show you this footage. Okay. And California, by the way, is the largest dairy state in the nation. Something that people don't realize. They think, oh, California, Hollywood, no, and tech. No, California is the largest dairy state in the nation with more than 2 million cows. And we're going to actually try to have Dr. Crystal Heath come on and talk about that. I want to get what you're going to say in a second, but Renee King-Sonnen wants to share something.
Yeah, I
Go
have
ahead.
to. I just have to. I was just looking up some things because inquiring mind wants to know. Right now there's over 168,000 chicken farms in the United States right now. And in Delmarva alone, which is on the East Coast, there is, unbelievable 601 million, expected to grow to 613 million chickens in the coming years, 23 to 24, 4.4 billion to 4.8 billion in revenue. That's a 1 to 3% growth in 2025. Y'all, the numbers are staggering. The flu crisis is not going to evaporate. We are looking at an issue that is only escalating. And if you go in and do the research all the way up through the next 5 years to 2030, it's unbelievable. We've got to do something. We've got to be loud. We cannot be quiet about this. And activists like Zoe and others that are putting their life on the line, literally, are the voices that we have to amplify. Others of us need to go forth and do this, because y'all, this is not just about the chickens. Look at the cows dying, and it's going to come to us. We are killing ourselves with this killing machine.
Yes, extremely well said. If you look at certain things that were accepted in the past, we go back now and we look with horror and we go, oh my God, how did they let that happen? How did they let people live in hideous slums with no sewage, just defecating on the street in Victorian times in the East End of London, when on the West End of London, polite ladies were beautifully dressed. And if you mention what was happening in the East End of London, where all these people who came from the farms into the cities for the Industrial Revolution and were living in filth, you were rude. This is one of the things that I've noticed throughout history. When the truth is rude, watch out. That's where we're at right now. The truth is rude. And we're trying to say, you know what? Our house is on fire. And if your house is on fire, I'm not going to say, hey, she's asleep in the bedroom. Let's wait till she gets around and wakes up and finds out the house is on fire. I'm going to go in there and get her the hell out of there and save her life, because if I don't shout and yell and wake her up from her deep sleep, she's going to die. And what if she turned around and said, how dare you? How dare you be so rude to interrupt my sleep as to tell me I need to get up and get out? And then you say, look, and this reminds me of that great film with Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Don't Look Up. And they in the movie, which was really about climate change, they go on this show and they're like, there was a meteor coming to wipe out Earth, which was a metaphor for climate change. And they're on the show, the morning show, and they're like, everybody, there's a crisis here. There's this meteor that's going to hit us. We need to do something. And the anchor turns and says, this is a morning show. Calm down. You're really out of line. You're way too loud. You're way too, the idiocy of that position when we're in a climate crisis where we're breaking through boundaries. And that's not me saying it. It's Sir David Attenborough saying we've only got 9 boundaries and we're crashing through them. And animal agriculture is a primary reason why we're crashing through them. We've almost wiped out all wildlife. And at the rate we're going, we're going to have no wildlife in a few years. And I know we said we were going to do an hour, but we get into these conversations. It's so important. Paige.
I'm just shaking my head because I remember being at the Smithsonian in DC, and they actually had a section of it. I don't know if it's still there, but about the 6th mass extinction, and there wasn't a mention of food. being one of the causes. And I thought that was fascinating. They had all kinds of other causes, but food was not part of the Smithsonian Museum. And I was stunned and amazed. But here's what also is stunning and amazing me. It makes me really sad because I think about the times I have visited the sanctuaries with a vigil here in California and Los Angeles area with Animal Alliance Network, in fact, that Ellen runs. California is home to over 1,100 dairy farms, okay, which houses approximately 1.72 million milk cows. Now, the thing about a milk cow is they're not born as milky cows. Are not born as milking cows. I thought this was the case. I lived on a farm when I was 8 years old. We were cattle ranchers. Actually, didn't know it until I went to visit one in Texas, and I realized I made the connection. But here's the point. I remember being told that cow that's our pet is our pet cow. It produces milk. Daisy. Daisy was her name. So in my 8-year-old mind, up until I made the connection in my 50s, 10 years ago, that's not the case. These are mothers. These are female cows that are being impregnated by human beings. You can imagine how painful that is. I would not want to be impregnated without permission. Not only that, but then they have babies and they're nursing their babies. I nursed my children. It was painful at times. Trust me, having something stuck to you all day long. And then those mothers become apparently cheap burgers. But here's the thing that I found. It's incredibly sad. I mean, I was over here holding back my tears, here hearing the mothers crying out for the babies on the dairy farms, right? And the babies crying out for the mothers. They were crying out for each other, and they were separated. The babies are lined up in these dog-type crates, and they're supposedly going to become veal, okay? And they're in these dog-type crates, thousands of them lined up like this. And then the mothers are over there going, oh, baby, I'm so sorry. I can't give you the milk. And the babies are like, Mama, what's going on? It's devastating, okay? Most people don't know this. But the other thing I found fascinating from current facts is apparently 99% of the dairy farms are family owned. Here's the thing. I just drove from Southern California to Northern California, and I passed by all these farms. And if those are family farms, okay, let me tell you, I would not want to be a family of cows on that frickin' farm. And if I'm being sold as the person who's paying extra money to pay for a family farm, it's a bunch of malarkey, it's lies, and it pisses me off. That's what I gotta say. And it makes me so sad because now I've seen the truth. I forced myself to go to these. I didn't have to go, but I said, what's going on? I'm curious. Because once I became an activist, I'm like, show me. Because some of it is so unbelievable that it's truly happening right now. I'm like, oh, that's been changed. In my mind, I'm thinking, this must have happened a long time ago. And it's stuff that I saw, right? Like, they're not still doing that. How can they get away with this? How can these chicken farmers get away with this? How can these cow farmers get away with it? I'm sorry.
Well, we have, and I want to bring Ellen Dent in, who has spoken also as a mother about this issue.
I mean, last year, my daughter was in kindergarten. She came home, with this, big dairy sponsored coloring book. And I was appalled because she had gone to a pumpkin patch on a field trip. And it showed, all these happy cows, can't wait to give up their milk, to give it to children and families, sitting around the table with glasses of milk and, other dairy products, and just completely humane washing what we know actually happens, on these farms and in these slaughterhouses. I've stood outside of slaughterhouses, where these female cows end up, and they are engorged and they look like they're in pain, and engorged means they're full of milk and it is spraying from their nipples. And I know, as a mother who also nursed my child like Paige, how painful that can be to be engorged and how painful it can be to end up with an infection. A lot of these cows get mastitis colitis from being milked all day long. And, this milk is not going to their babies. It is supposed to go to their babies. And that is exactly what I told, Aria's principal from her school right now when she called, was this milk is not meant for human consumption. It is meant for cows, to grow a baby cow into a 500-pound cow in about 6 months, and that's something, that I saw on a documentary, and I was like, wow, like, why are we giving this to our children, as a species? No other species is doing this and stealing milk from another species, impregnating them over and over again. This isn't, the bull impregnating the cow. This is them extracting the semen from a bull, manually, a human being violating the male cow, and then taking that semen and shoving it with their hand into another, a female cow who's on this apparatus that is often referred to as a rape rack, because they are being, essentially raped, by human beings. So, I was infuriated when my daughter came home with that coloring book, and, instead of, just, crying or making a huge ruckus about it, which I did have a conference call with her principal and her teachers about it. We decided to get to work. I reached out to Dotsie Bosch, who, runs Switch for Good. She put me in touch with Tiffany, and she helped me to work on a coloring book with Food in a Flash. They were already working on a coloring book, and you can see here it actually features Aria right here. But we, worked on this coloring book for months as a response to this, pro-dairy coloring book. This coloring book is, available for distribution now. It shows, amazing scenes of, kids enjoying shopping and, eating plants. It's a really exciting project that we worked on with Plant-Based Treaty, Switch for Good, and Food in a Flash. And it encourages kids to drink plant milk and eat, their fruits and their veggies, and all these amazing foods that are made from plants and not from other animals. So I was really excited to hear from her principal that they will be telling the teachers at the school to not distribute the coloring activity book propaganda from Big Dairy that they give to kindergartners every year. I have talked to several parents, not just vegan ones, and they were puzzled as to why this coloring book came home with their children, especially from a pumpkin patch. So, thank you so much, for everyone who's sharing this. Your voice is important. The power of an individual to help advocate against, these lies and this violence is possible. I'm just one voice, and I reached out to that principal and said, no, we can't do this. I reached out to the International Vegan Society. They sent me the list of my rights as a vegan mother, that this kind of propaganda cannot be sent home with children.
Wow. Well, I just think you are a hero for the animals.
Yay.
Absolutely amazing. I just think, this is an example of how when something might seem like negative news, at first it could turn into positive news. There's a gift in there. There's a gift in this trial that allows all of us to be discussing what's happening. So we're going to wrap it up, but final thoughts from everybody. I'm going to start with Renee King-Sonnen, the former cattle rancher turned vegan sanctuary owner who is visiting Los Angeles from Texas. And I want to get her title up there before we turn her around. And I'm going to very carefully, so I don't disconnect this time, put you on full screen. Go ahead, my dear.
Yeah, thank you for having me on today. It's been a pleasure to be up here in Los Angeles with you this weekend, and to see all of my comrades, a lot of them which are on this show today. I was just sitting here just blowing my mind at the growth rate that's happening with the production of chickens. I'm speaking about chickens right now because we're talking about Zoe's trial. Just the productions of chickens alone in our country, and the stakes at which the prosecution will go to make sure that those numbers do not decline. We are in a position, y'all, where if our defense could help the judge see what is on the line here, for the prosecution. The prosecution must show us as terrorists. They must show us as, people that are trying to rip our culture and our identity and everything that makes us American apart. They must show us that way if they are going to keep the escalation of chicken farms growing 5,000 in Delmarva alone. I mean, the growth rate is staggering. It is scheduled to grow 1 to 3% in 2025. It's not going down. That is why we have to. The defense has to show this.
Yeah, but Renee, and I will take you, there's your title gone. The problem is that the defense can't show whatever it wants. It wants to show images of what Direct Action Everywhere has videotaped inside these facilities. And I'll show some of the video that they would like to present.
But it's not about the images.
The jury is not going to see this.
But what about the data? Maybe we can. I'm trying to spin this as if they won't look at the coverage of these poor chickens. Maybe they'll listen to hard data. I just, did my own research. It's right there. The defense could use the data. Why would the prosecution want us to prove that? I mean, this could be like a sleeping gun for the defense. I hope they use it.
I forget what someone said, but they said it's hard to prove something to a man whose paycheck depends on not knowing that.
Exactly.
Okay. So, by the way, we invite companies involved in this case on any time. We would love to dialogue with you. Again, we have put up already Purdue's website and their statement, and they deny all animal cruelty. This is a slaughter line, and Zoe Rosenberg points out the flapping chickens are chickens that are still alive. And this is one of her allegations, that chickens are sometimes boiled alive and scalded, and the company denies that. So this is the epic battle that is happening right now. And this is the footage that the prosecution has made sure that the jury will never see. But you're seeing it, and you can share this video out. You can let people know, for example, about Unchained TV. We are a 501c3 nonprofit news and entertainment network. We promote the plant-based lifestyle, just like MSNBC has a point of view and Fox News has a point of view. We have a point of view, but we still remain factual, and we invite the other side on any time to comment. And you have an open invitation, anyone from Perdue, Petaluma Farms. So we're out of time. I'm going to give 10 seconds for final thoughts, starting with Lindsay Baker.
My final thoughts are just, please, everyone, share this out. Make sure we do our part to help get the word out. We've got to do this.
All right. Tiffany Brunelli.
Yes, we can get the word out now. There's stuff going all over. We're in the week of Rose's Law's actions all over the United States, all over the world. There's stuff planned this weekend. There's going to be a vigil at a slaughterhouse in Orange County on Saturday. Wednesday, 6 banners over the 10, 6 freeway overpasses. We're going to hit Wednesday night afternoon traffic. So look up DXC online, or DXC Los Angeles, DXC Orange County, and there's still time to get the word out about the trial, about Rose's Law, and about the truth about animal agriculture. So
Ellen?
Thank you, Jane.
Final thought.
The culture has to change. Times are changing. I actually forgot to mention that Harris County, which encompasses Houston, actually gave our team in Houston a grant to educate children about the benefits of plant-based eating and distribute the coloring book. And this is in Texas, where Renee's from. So we can change this narrative. Please share, as everyone is saying, please let everybody know the truth that's behind animal agriculture. They are who deserves to be on this trial, not Zoe Rosenberg. Look at that footage. Make sure that everybody that knows that this is happening.
Thank you, Ellen Page.
Yes, I second that I have hope. I do, because if I can change I had no reason to change. If I can change, someone else who sees the truth perhaps can. And let's hope with the actions that are happening in Petaluma by the activists, not extremists. These are people who are very caring and compassionate. They just want to get the word out. They're caring, compassionate people. That folks in the town will see this and be swayed, not swayed, but given the truth and be shown that maybe what they're saying isn't through this propaganda material that's being sent to them. That, wait a minute, if I'm supporting farmers, am I really supporting farmers? Because what's really going on here? You see? So keep up the great work, Direct Action Everywhere. And I want to celebrate the action in real time. Being part of the plant-based treaty, it's been so exciting to see action in real time. So Ellen, we're celebrating this. This took a lot of phone calls, a lot of reaching out. The coloring book, the activity book is so amazing. It's great for all ages. I love a good word search. And, you know, obviously we're looking for funding all over for this as well, because we want to get it out to as many people as possible, because that's one place that they're not going to be sending this dairy situation propaganda home, but it's happening all over the United States. USDA is sponsoring it and sending out these coloring books. So without that, I mean, look.
The USDA has been completely co-opted by the meat and dairy industry.
Okay.
The media has been completely co-opted by the meat and dairy industry.
Yes.
This is why we started Unchained TV. Now, Renee, I'm going to give you the final word.
All I have to say here is that we all should be amplifying Unchained TV's coverage on this trial. We need to be sharing it out everywhere. Amplify, amplify, amplify. Let's get the momentum on this trial.
Woo! And we're going to be covering it every single day. We've made a commitment. There is hopefully a jury going to be seated this week. Hopefully we could even possibly have opening statements this week. I don't know, but we're going to be here every single day. And I hope you're going to be here. And I can tell you that you can download Unchained TV for free on your phone. Just go to your app store and put in the word Unchained TV. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we give out all of our 2,000 videos for free. We are covering this trial until its conclusion. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Download Unchained TV, visit Unchained TV, and share